Well, hello everyone. My name's Anna, Anna Millar, and it's great to be with you here today. And thank you very much to Rolf for the kind invitation to come and speak to you today on the real results with ReaShure. And as Chris mentioned, he didn't feel very local. I'm not particularly local myself. I flew in this morning from Northern Ireland, so I'm based over there along with some of the Trident Micronutri team. And yeah, so it's really nice to come over and speak to you today. So yeah, I've been with Trident Micronutri now for around 4 months, so still learning the ropes, and it's been great to work alongside Rolf on some ReaShure projects so far. So what I'd like to cover today, just to give you a bit of an outline, I'm going to show you some of the latest research around colostrum and how ReaShure affects colostrum volume and quality. But the rest of the presentation will focus on when really should we be feeding ReaShure, and at what point do we have the greatest benefit. And also we'll consider the economics of that, so at different time points, where do we get the greatest return on investment. And then we'll have a look at some of the real results, and in particular we'll have a bit of a case study on a farm here in the UK as well. So some of the newest research we have here, so this is from Michigan State University, and it was found that whenever we're feeding ReaShure-XC to our transition cows, we had significantly enhanced colostrum yields. And the really nice thing about this was that in fact we didn't affect quality either, so we're not getting any dilution there. So we had a 2.9 kilo increase in colostrum yield when feeding ReaShure-XC as opposed to not feeding it at all. This was replicated in another study then in 2023. And again, same trend, we increased colostrum volume, but yet there was no effect on colostrum quality. So again, no dilution, and a 2 kilo increase this time. Another look then at colostrum quality. This is a slightly older study, but and it was with the ReaShure as opposed to ReaShure-XC. And what was found was that colostrum quality increased, so our IgGs in grams per cow was increased by 43%. So this is a really nice result as well. We have seen some of this in the real results as well. So it's nice that what we're finding in research settings is coming through in practical settings as well. If you'd like more information on those studies, we can get that for you, it's no problem. So when should we be feeding ReaShure-XC? There's quite a lot of variation out there on farms as far as transition cow management is concerned. Sometimes we have a very long transition period, sometimes there is no transition diet at all, sometimes we have a fresh group, sometimes we don't. So it's good for us to consider when the best time to feed this product is and when we can get the best results. So as has already been discussed in great detail this morning, but in a very short summary from myself, of course, we have increased NEFAs around the time of calving. So the energy deficit around the time of transition is often underestimated, and we can have an increase in fat accumulation in the liver. Okay. And what we find then with ReaShure, so if we have, so days relative to calving here, we can see that before calving we have a fairly low percentage of liver fat, but then it does increase as that energy deficit so the cow is trying to make up that deficit, and we have the lay down of fat in the liver. So what we think is that feeding ReaShure pre-partum, we can prevent this fatty liver. However, after calving, we are simply alleviating and preventing further accumulation of that fat. So we have some theoretical effects here. When is the greatest benefit? So if we have, for example, a farm where there is no facility for a fresh cow group, for example. So if we're only feeding ReaShure pre-calving, we can see in the orange line here that we do still have a slightly lower liver fat percentage than in the black line, but it is an increasing trend. So this would indicate that perhaps the idea of the most ideal is to feed both before and after calving. If we look at the blue line, this is whenever we don't feed pre-calving. So we're simply alleviating those levels, but they have been very high first of all. But again, green line is the best of all because we have a lower liver fat at the point of calving at day 0, but we can have the greatest reduction there as well. Now these are theoretical effects, so whenever we're looking then at results following, it'll be interesting to see, do we have similar trends? So from an economics point of view then, approximate cost of feeding ReaShure-XC on farm is 40 pence per cow per day. So if we base that on a 42-day transition, so we have 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after calving, which we think is the best protocol for feeding ReaShure, this works out at £16.80 per cow per transition. Now, it maybe sounds like quite an investment. However, I think it's very, very important that we would consider the additional benefits that can be achieved whenever feeding ReaShure. So, oftentimes whenever applying products to farm and adding things to diets, we think about our return on milk yield and we always look for litres. And it's very, very important to do that, of course, because that's your instant cash. That is what's generating revenue on the farm. But often I think maybe we overlook the other benefits. So are we getting benefits in health or fertility, for example? So it's important for us to bring those out on a practical level as well. Now, interestingly, if we consider some other alternative or other approaches perhaps to supporting the energy balance of cows around calving, if we look perhaps at the likes of a Kextone tablet, it's quite expensive per transition. Of course, that would not be all cows receiving that. Maybe if we're adding some bypass fat, we can have costs around there. But what really are the benefits that we're achieving with those products in comparison to the benefits that we get with ReaShure? Interestingly enough, there's some questions over the likes of the Kextone tablet at the moment and its registration and things. So I think it would be good for us to have in the back of our minds what would be a good alternative, and we know that ReaShure really would be the better option anyway. So I think if we just keep that in the back of our minds, that there are some sort of uncertainties around that at the moment, and this may be an opportunity for us to put ReaShure into more transition diets. Now, this is an interesting idea as well. What if we were to feed ReaShure to cows during the whole dry cow period only? And this was calculated in some studies, we have sort of 20 years of peer-reviewed research with ReaShure, which is brilliant as well. So if we're feeding for the entire dry cow period, we can still get the pre-calving benefits. So it's not that if you really can't facilitate the fresh cow group that it's a complete disaster. You'll still get some benefits, but as far as milk yield benefit is concerned, we're looking at 60% of that. So it's good to consider that whenever deciding when to feed. And what was found was that the return on investment on a 60-day dry period was 13-1. Whereas on a 45-day dry period, the return on investment was 17-1. So I think what this demonstrates is that actually the transition cow is the cow that's getting the most benefit out of that. If we look at the right-hand side of the screen, this is a calculation which has been done on 21 days pre and 21 days post. So again, we're back to the idea of feeding both before and after calving. And if we look at calculated return on investment, we have 23-1. So again, we're back to the same old, we think it's best to have 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after calving for ReaShure feeding. So with the real results challenge then, we have some results here from the USA and Europe. These graphs are based on 45 herds with average herd size of 2,500 cows. So it's quite a lot of cows in this calculation. Now, again, our friend pre and post calving. This is a similar trend now. We're starting to get into something with this. The greatest or the most stark result, of course, is our milk yield benefit. So we have 2.5 kilos per day of an increase. But again, I would like to just draw your attention to this idea of the other benefits that we may get with ReaShure. And Sometimes it's hard to measure these, and as Chris has already mentioned, that sometimes we can't publish these in research studies because they are just difficult. But from a farm point of view, I think it's good for us to at least acknowledge the trend here in increased health. And as you can see, we have much reduced health events. So, for example, what is the cost of displaced abomasum? Well, recent Kingshay calculations estimated an average cost of about £340 per cow. So if we can have a reduction in that, then we have a reduction in costs. But we also have a reduction in headaches for the farmer and time taken up and labour. So I think we need to take sort of a holistic approach on that. And of course, we have our other elements to consider as well. For example, involuntary culling. Really we want to keep cows in the herd for longer. I think cows are not necessarily staying in herds for a long enough period even to become profitable. So from a farm profitability and sustainability point of view, I think it will be really important for us to demonstrate that we can improve overall health and keep cows in the herd for that bit longer. Now, if we consider this with only feeding pre-calving, so remember we had a 2.5 kilo increase in milk whenever we were feeding both pre and post. Whenever we're only feeding before calving, we have a 1.4 kilo increase. So yes, it is a bit less. We're still getting a bit of milk yield increase, but we are looking at less. So again, I think pre and post seems to be the best option there. But we do have a good improvement in health here as well with our health figures too. So really do bear that in mind, that not just to consider litres, I think, is very important. So a particular farm that we've been working with here in the UK, and Anna has been working very close with them, is with Metcalfe Farms. So this is quite a large farm. It's a big business here in the UK. They've 1,100 cows and milk. And it's quite a high yielding herd as well, so 37.5 kilos per day, and this was at the time of the trial. We have 3.9 butterfat and 3.2 protein, and a close-up dry group and a fresh group. So this is an example of where we have both feeding before and after calving. The overall aim of this transition group and what this farm wanted to achieve was that they wanted to improve overall transition of the cows, the success of transition, and they wanted to increase 3-week milk yields as well, so to get the cows hitting the ground running and being more productive at the beginning of lactation. They felt they perhaps weren't just achieving their full potential. Also, there was good sort of scientific results there, and there was good anecdotal sort of feedback too. So there were lots of evidence to go for the use of the product here. Another interesting thing that they were looking at was their colostrum quality as well. They wanted to have better quality colostrum, perhaps looking at increasing volume as well. So they were interested to see would ReaShure have any effects there too. So the study design here, this was 30 grams of ReaShure-XC, so this is the more concentrated version of the product. Now, they only fed this for 17 days pre-calving, so it was a little bit shorter than 3 weeks, and the reason was because they were feeding Excelit, so their transition, or their pre-calving transition group was slightly shorter. But they did go 21 days post-calving with their fresh cow group, which was great. This took place in April 22. So the results then of this trial, now we didn't have a control or treatment group here. This was quite simply put it in and let's see what happens. But what seems to have happened is that whenever ReaShure was added in April of 22, there was quite a stark increase in 3-week milk yield. And it was felt that this was down to the addition of ReaShure. Interestingly, going back to our health figures, there was a sort of a minimal incidence of metabolic disease there as well. So the farm felt that they were having less ketosis, less milk fever, and it was estimated around 2.5% rate of metabolic disease there too. Now, considering their aims for colostrum, they did find that the colostrum quality increased, and they're sort of regularly using their Brix refractometer to monitor colostrum quality, and this was increased. And it wasn't in a very sort of measured way, but the overall trend was they felt the colostrum quality was improved. So that was quite nice for them too. Not necessarily an increase in volume in this case, but certainly there on quality. So, ReaShure then, yeah, it's very well researched. We have lots of peer-reviewed papers there, but the nice thing about this is that from a practical point of view and a farmer feedback point of view, we're getting the good results there in a practical setting too, and the good feedback. Again, some of the latest research, we're looking at improvements in colostrum volume and quality, so that's really, really good there too. And it seems like from both a results or a real results point of view, but also from an economic point of view, it seems that feeding ReaShure both pre and post calving is most beneficial, not only for a leader's point of view, but also for the health of the cow and for the farmer's pocket as well. Yeah, so it's good that we have that proven in both the scientific and in the practical setting. So thank you very much for listening to my practical look at ReaShure, and hopefully that was useful to you.